you check the children. Show a little match sometimes.
Hi, I'm Chucky. Wanna play?
Sometimes. That is what
You're gonna need a bigger boat.
Bienvenidos, Fright fans. Welcome to the horror show. I'm Jaime and Fuego, and here to talk about a film that was most recently released to theaters. That's not like of the full-on hardcore horror variety, but it's most definitely a January release that I feel like might go under the radars of some. And so, no, it's not Founders Day. Unfortunately, I heard a lot of really bad stuff about that one, and so not to throw that under the proverbial bus, but it was really down to that and I.S.S, International Space Station, which is a partnership which has been happening since the end of the Cold War. Even before that, if I'm not mistaken, if we're reaching all the way back to post World War II, when we were still kind of working together and you had cosmonauts and astronauts and everything. But so this was something that was on the blacklist, if I'm not mistaken. And the blacklist is a situation where there is a script that everybody wants to produce, but they're just trying to find the proper financiers. They're trying to find the ideal cast situation, studio, whatever, because everything entails money. And so a great process on paper is really what this had. And so anytime somebody has a brilliant idea, you better believe somebody in Hollywood is going to pick up on it. And so it's like, okay, you've got in the midst of current turmoil, which is still going down between Russian, Ukrainian, and how Americans are still, from a governmental standpoint, dealing with the conflict over there. And that's not even touching upon other stuff, which we're not here to really put our foot in the ground about at all, because this is a horror show channel. But this is a thriller that I am talking about in I.S.S. And so, yeah, imagine if you are on a space station and you are American or you're Russian, and the opposing bit of people, and I even hesitate to say opposing, but the other side of the world that you are working together becomes suddenly opposition because of the fact that there is a they start launching, man, yeah, and each of your respective governments are like, you need to take over this space station, which, one of my few, as overall thoughts here, as we always give on the horror show channel, one of my biggest issues with this, despite the fact that I did enjoy this movie, and that's plain and clear right off the bat, these are not military trained people. Maybe there's some sort of cross training that happens on the Russian side that I'm unaware of, and there is in fact a minor spoiler of the fact that one of our astronauts has actually been a former military presence, and then she veered, I should say, into another field of thinking and research and stuff like that, which is why she's up here in the first place. But yeah, based on that, man, I definitely dug the aspect of what would happen when you have these people pitted against each other, when they're not even sure how trustful their own governments are, when they know their governments are acting in this knee-jerk sort of situation. They're like, take over, blah, 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 and they're hearing it from both sides, and I'm spoiling a moderate chunk of the initial movie. But damn, it's intriguing, because of the fact that it really boils down to, would somebody have hesitation when they are in a situation of, I've worked with these people for months, years, in fact. We don't have specifics, but you get the vibe in the fact that there are situations when the new people versus the old people, and then when, even who are the presumed bad guys, there's a lot of shades of gray. There is one moment in particular where a character knows the duty that, and I'm not saying American or Russian, by the way, everybody, but, he knows what he has been asked to do, and he's looking, and they have this close-up shot, and there was some crying, almost borderline tears. I'm not talking whining like a bitch. I'm talking just like fighting with yourself, trying to figure out, should I really do this? Should I forge forward with it? It's duty and country, or at a more micro sort of level, as opposed to the macro side of things. Should I just be respectful and try to think that the people that I have spent so much time with are more important than the duty of those who I've never met or seen in my entirety. And it's like mindlessness versus like the more personability aspect of it. And all of these questions, all of these vibes that I'm talking about are what make this movie so interesting. It's not a great movie. In a lot of ways, I can see why it was on the blacklist because of the fact that it was underdeveloped. And underdeveloped is where you have a terrific friggin' idea. And you're just like, where do we go with the terrific idea? It's like the elevator pitch, right? You have the elevator pitch and you're like, oh man, I'm going to make a movie about the fact that you have Russians and Americans on the space station and what happens when nuclear war starts down there. And then the last transmission is each of their respective governments trying to tell them, hey, take over, do this, do that. And yet they're hesitant to do it. All of the acting, primo, dude. Primo. It's really freaking good. And most notably, our lead, and she has an interesting factor, in my estimation, in the fact that she has some trust with one character, and then she veers into trust with another character. And I had to pause for a second because of the fact that I had to remember that there was like a legitimate bait and switch that happens, without spoiling things, about the nature of certain characters on each side, which I appreciated greatly. And so overall thoughts, it's very much a 3-ish, letterbox sort of situation, guys. Again, gals, and however you identify for here on the horror show, but it really it was impressive. Not like immensely impressive, but from a storytelling standpoint and from an executionary standpoint. Because of the fact that performances were good, I've given a lot about the story right off this bat, and I love the bait and switch. I love the fact that there is a dueling both Russian and English language contingent within this, and also the moderate grasp of the language gap on each side is incorporated here and there, which I did appreciate. I also like the fact that the way that they film this, if I'm going to go into the cinematography standpoint and also the moderate aspect of effects that they do within this, there was one point where somebody is trying to maintain and fix a antenna, and they get out there and they take a peek at what is transpiring on Earth, and they're like, don't let anybody look out the windows, man. I know it's silly because anybody could do whatever the hell they want, and it's a point that's never migrated back to, as far as like people wanting to see what's going on. And yes, that's me riding with blinders and trying to focus more so upon the positives, because man, how much more so, this is a 90-minute movie. Like, if you had peeps trying to, I would imagine some of the other characters did take the time to go and and see what was actually transpiring on Earth, because shit's getting blown up, dude, and we're not talking like a rain of fire, so to speak. So there's a lot of other beats that could have been explored. I feel like I'm defending this movie more so than I probably should at this particular point, because once again, I think I initiated it with a missed opportunity, because dude, this could have been a 4, maybe bordering on 4.5, if it had been handled with higher name actors, a lengthier sort of slow burn, and all of the distrust, because we've seen films like this countless times since the beginning of time, so we're not going to say, oh, it's ripping this off or that off, but when Cecil hates his bunker movies, and yet when you're locked in this sort of confined situation and everybody is distrusting one another and they're trying to backhandedly make other alliances and whatever, that's exactly what this movie is trying to do. And yet a lot of the aspects that lead them into this particular frame of thinking of distrust and trying to F each other over, they kind of gloss over it. So it's a mixed bag with regards to this particular film. I I would say that a matinee, like a nice one, would probably be, if it was you know, financially feasible, would give you more into this film than if you're gonna watch it at home, which is where it's probably quite quickly going to find its residence, you know, very soon, because it's not gonna make a ton of money. But this is one, it's not like Gravity or anything of that nature, but the in-space stuff was good, you know, and I feel like the scale of the storytelling, you know, like intergovernmental conflict, international conflict, and, you know, also harkening back to Cold War sort of stuff, like, this is big, heavy sort of shit. The fact that it's gonna just kind of remain as an afternote is a little bit disappointing, because there was, in my estimation at least, more good than bad that was done with ISS, International Space Station, you know. But yeah, it's not gonna find the audience, in my estimation, that it really deserves, which is kind of a bummer, because I was impressed. I wasn't wowed, but I was impressed, and that's really the case that I feel with more movies than anything else. And even in 2013, some of the heavier hitters, and I'm even throwing in stuff like, you know, Zone of Interest, Anatomy of a Fall, some of the bigger films that I was impressed with. I mean, they were better than this one, but wow, shots fired on that. But yeah, guys, that's my thoughts on ISS, International Space Station, one film that yeah, was you know, in development hell for the longest time. They jumped around different very poignant sort of bits, whether it was the music of oh boy, the Scorpions, take me to the magic of the moment. That scene was, you know, imperative and important because of the fact that those characters were saying, not on the American side, but on the other side, that it was a song that meant more to them than it did the Americans. And we were like, well, the Scorpions were German, so of course it would make more sense, even though it was sung in English. So I don't know. There's some divides within this, but there was a lot of savvy and, you know, positive, engaging performances. So that's the toughest thing, when you have a film that you respect and you know it could have been a lot better. It was still pretty good, but it could have been immensely better, and that was ISS for me. So anyway, I've been Jaime Fuego. You can find me on all social media sectors: Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, YouTube, TikTok. Yeah, unfortunately, that's where I put the uncensored, not even uncensored, it's like the uncut versions, because of the fact that there's those minutes constraints and stuff. And thankfully, if I'm doing like a short review of something, you can just toss it right on there in the 2 to 3 minute range, as opposed to cutting it off at 1 minute, as you see on Instagram and, you know, X, Twitter, whatever the hell they call it now. So yeah, guys, that's where anything non-horror is being covered by myself. But Cecil is actually doing Shut Up, I Like It, which is rad status, and that is him. I'm hopefully going to be guesting on there at some particular point, but that's like some food tastings and just analysis about the artistry that is the culinary, and I look forward to getting my chance to, you know, give some input there as well. So anyway, Patreon peeps, like, share, subscribe, you know, toss on a suggestion for us. We greatly appreciate it. But yeah, I've been Fuego, y'all have been rad status, and thanks from myself, Robert, you know, Marcia, Susie, the entire team. We love you guys so very much. And yeah, until next time, Fright fans. And this has thrilling aspects, and it earns its R rating just a little bit, but yeah, it wasn't bad, man. Remember, stay scared.